Notes on clamping force and bolt torque. From the pocket reference, randomly opened. Standard dry torques for stainless steel and non-ferrous bolts were compiled from test data and fasteners and published by bolt manufacturers and trade publications and in fastener test books.
Bolts.
This thing's great. So, second half of the show. Well, third segment, I should say.
Yeah.
We don't know how long the show is going to. It might be a long one, which is fine.
Yeah.
And we're joined in studio by Marty, and we're going through some fascinating USO reports.
Yeah.
From both centuries ago and modern times.
Before you keep going, the quote from the first segment where the guy was talking about quantum physics and the relationship with like all of the stuff we're learning about physics and the nature of reality based on these things that we're learning, like I've had this idea going on in my head, a big what if that I'd like to explain at some point when we're open to discussion, maybe at the end or something like that. So I just want to let you, because I don't want to jump in and like create this huge tangent, but I want to let you know that I would like to throw some ideas out there.
I have a prediction that your tangent is going to be covered in the fourth.
Okay. All right, cool. Wow. You guys will believe me if I say I came up with that one myself, right?
So let's wrap up a little bit on the USO stuff.
All right.
In 2019, the military defense website, The War Zone, revealed that National Geographic's director of underwater photography and member of Ocean X, Luis Lamar, alleges to have encountered underwater aliens during his diving assignments. According to the website, the underwater photographer, quote, has sent robotic camera systems into one of the deepest ocean trenches on Earth, and he has logged hundreds of hours in crewed submarines, including on 5 expeditions with the U.S. Navy's deepest diving manned research submersible, Alvin, diving beyond 12,000 feet deep in the abyss into photographic environments at the edges of the ocean's frontier. While describing the numerous strange marine species he saw beneath the ocean, he discussed encounters with what appeared to be alien beings much more advanced than humans. On January 3rd, 2019, the War Zone also published an article titled, "What U.S. Submariners Actually Say About Detection of So-Called Unidentified Submerged Objects." The article begins with what initially seems like a typical dismissive statement. Quote, there has been a spat of high-profile claims regarding U.S. nuclear submarines detecting and even interacting with underwater equivalents of unidentified flying objects, referred to in UFO circles as USOs, or unidentified submerged objects. Yet when it comes to the covert world of naval warfare below the waves, it is easy for the layman to misinterpret things that may seem very much alien to them, but are actually quite commonplace. The War Zone reached out to some of its submariner contacts, all of which have many years of experience aboard U.S. nuclear submarines, to see if detection of unidentified objects actually happens, and what we thought what they thought on the topics in general. We were surprised by what we heard. The article goes on to quote, on December 29th, 2018, our friend Danny Silva, one of the Silva record, brought the following to our attention. Tom DeLonge, once the lead man for the rock group Blink-182, turned frontman for the To the Stars Academy, a flashy new hybrid entertainment technology research group that focuses on disclosure of information regarding UFOs, made the Instagram post below. In it, he claims, without any evidence, that, quote, a few years ago, an unidentified craft underwater was pinned against the North Atlantic coast by multiple nuclear attack submarines for over a week, unquote. To investigate the claim, the Warzone consulted with one of their contacts that was willing to go on the record and is a veteran of sonar operations and an instructor who confirmed that such detections do occur. He states, quote, "I don't know what they are. We usually log them as seismic or biologic. We are instructed that nothing is ever unknown. That is the thing. It is so quick you can't measure the speed. In the examples I'm thinking of, it is a detection that lasts only a few seconds on the towed array. There is no way to measure the speed accurately because there isn't enough data."
Towed array? Is
Yes.
that an acronym?
Yeah, I assume.
Okay.
Or it's being towed by the sub.
Oh, towed. Okay.
Yeah. I agree it's odd. There are a lot of odd things in the ocean, unquote.
So wait, they are instructed that nothing is ever
Never to
unknown?
log anything as unknown. It's seismic or biological.
Right, but he's saying that the objects
That's
are
a
so
terrible
fast,
policy.
Yeah.
so fast that they can't track the speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that.
And I mean, I'm assuming that this isn't like classic radar where it's spinning, right? And so if it takes it a full second to go around and the thing has moved across half the hemisphere in a full second, then you only see it twice before it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Well, if you see it twice, I mean, can't you get a speed from that?
you can get an estimate, but if it's, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm assuming it's not doing that. Like it's not a
Right.
spinning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, without a doubt, the most famous of all UFO/USO incidents was the 2004 USS Nimitz encounter. The official pilot report provides the following account. Quote, "A source looked down at the ocean from the cockpit. They noticed a small patch of water approximately 60 feet wide by 80 feet in length that appeared choppy and turbulent amongst the sea. The disturbance was unusual in that there was no apparent cause. The area was generally in the shape of an oval and appeared to be rolling. Towards the center of the disturbance, the water appeared lighter in color and smooth again as if an object had recently submerged beneath the surface. Sources opined that though they thought they were witnessing or had witnessed a crash, perhaps that of an unidentified aircraft, as that may. The mental transition from intercept mission to search and rescue. Approximately 2 seconds after noticing the unusual water disturbance, source described witnessing a small unidentified aerial system cross over the turbulent sea of water. The unidentified object was elongated, approximately 30 to 40 feet long in length, white in color, and described as resembling a Tic Tac candy mint. The object did not appear to emit any noticeable light or radiation from its surface, nor did it have any noticeable exhaust trail. The object traveled from left to right over the disturbed water at an altitude of approximately 1,000 to 3,000 feet. The object appeared to travel at a speed of approximately 300 to 500 knots in a straight line. Source was unaware of the origin of the object or the destination, but it believed the disturbed water below could have been related in some way to the object."
Is Source Fravor in this case, or is this the guy that saw it first?
No, this was the pilot that saw it first.
Right.
Interestingly enough, that pilot, the Nimitz encounter occurred in 2004.
Yeah.
In 2000, before, let me see here. If I remember, I'm trying to remember years. That pilot was hired by Bass or by Bigelow
Yep.
before the Nimitz encounter was revealed.
Oh.
And recently in an interview, Bigelow disclosed that, according to the pilot, the Tic Tac actually emerged from the water. That's a detail that has not been...
Right. It was weird that was kind of skated over with the Fravor
Yeah.
interviews. That like they talked about the disturbance in the water, but nothing more about it. That this thing was above it.
Right.
And that was the most interesting part to me. I was like, I got the idea that the disturbance in the water was too big for them to assume that small object is what made it.
Yeah.
I think the inference is that was some type of a mothership type thing under the water.
That's
that
yeah,
the Tic
that-
Tac
that's
emerged
That
from
the Tic Tac was, at the very least, At least the way Fravor explained it on Lex Friedman's podcast was he was like, look, it was definitely around that spot for whatever reason, but Lex tried to push him on the disturbance under the water, and Fravor was like, look, man, I can't give you any more details. It was... Yeah.
And at the beginning, there were actually multiple targets, and they dropped into radar coverage
That's right,
from
yeah.
above 80,000 feet.
That's right. They were seeing those for weeks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They
That's
dropped
right.
down in.
Yeah.
In Fravor's interview on Rogan, he refers to other incidents, not that he observed, but friends,
Yep.
where they encountered some type of object under the water,
Yeah.
where they were recovering buoys,
Yep.
and these things would come up and pull the buoys down.
Yeah, yank the buoys.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. We've been seeing these for weeks, and I'm like, what?
So the December 2017 New York Times article, which covered the Nimitz encounter, also revealed the existence of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP. But as surprising as that revelation was, it was only one aspect of a much larger and stranger Pentagon-funded program. But for that detail, we'll need to shift our focus from the ocean off the coast of San Diego to the desert of the Uinta Basin in Utah.
Uinta Basin.
A little bit.
Uinta Basins.
Yep. Some of the earliest details regarding experiences at an infamous ranch were found in an article by David Perkins published in 1997 in Spirit magazine. This was before this
Ranch came out.
Skinwalker was on the radar.
Yeah. But that's
No pun
during.
intended.
But that's during. Isn't that during the period when? What's the name of the family? They were
The
living
Shermans.
there. Yeah,
Yes.
the Shermans were living
Yes,
there. Yeah.
correct. In 2004, rancher Terry Sherman and his wife Gwen purchased the 480-acre land bordering the Uinta and Ore Ute Indian Reservation,
Yep.
protected by a long red ridge. They were puzzled why the piece of prime property had been sitting vacant for 7 years. The ranch's previous owner, who had no children, had lived there since the 1930s. Mr. Myers had died 15 years previously, and Mrs. Myers lived there by herself for 7 more years before she passed away. Terry had conversations with a group of Ute Indians who worked the local water department. The Indians told Terry that they had formed a pool to take up bets on to how long the Shermans would last on
Yeah.
the ranch.
Wow.
The longest guess was a year and a half, and the Shermans lasted 2 years.
Yeah. Can I throw in a detail that fascinated me in the book? Mm-hmm. They talked about how when they first got there and they were looking over the house, the buildings, that the main house had like freaking 7 locks on the door.
On both sides of
On
the
both
doors.
sides of the house, yeah. And they were just like, okay, what? The person was paranoid. And of course, then they start staying there, and then at night, shit starts happening. And then they started understanding why you want to lock all these locks, because there's all this
crap.
crazy stuff happening outside.
Right. The local Indian shaman, a local Indian shaman friend of Terry's, told him that that there were tribal songs about the spirits and spooks on the ranch going back 10 generations. And the shaman said the area was considered unholy ground and was on the path of the skinwalkers.
Yeah.
Father Silvestre Velez de Escalante, while on the famous Dominguez Escalante mapping expedition of the American Northwest, described encountering strange fireballs in that area in 1776.
Yep.
In April of 1995, while checking on his cattle one evening, Terry saw a silent glowing object pass over the trees at the edge of one of his fields. A few days later, Gwen saw another unexplained flying object. It looked like headlights, but they were at a distance, away from the craft. It just lit up the whole side of the mountain like it was broad daylight. Terry soon started experiencing odd cattle deaths on the ranch.
And movements, right?
Yeah,
They wouldn't always die, but like the story where they got moved into that little tiny, all of them were crammed into that trailer.
Yeah, there's so many crazy stories related to this. There's no way I could put them all in.
Of course,
we
yeah.
could do 2 episodes just on the
Yeah.
occurrences that have been described there. But
Yeah.
there's some. I wanted to hit some highlights of some of the
Yeah.
rather strange ones.
Okay.
Here. During the next few months, the Shermans observed a variety of craft, and the mutilation activity continued. The most spectacular aerial phenomenon they observed was described by Terry. Quote, "We would see 100-foot circular opening in the air. It was like 4 orange-colored doorways that would start to spiral open. Looking through a high-powered scope, the Shermans watched as smaller craft would emerge from the hovering portals, flying around the property and then re-entering the doorways. The Shermans described the stealthy small craft as being 60 by 40 and squarish with short wings. The smaller craft looked like they were flying in a grid and appeared to be emitting spikes of light that would hit the ground. During the summer, Terry and his son and his nephew had been heard unintelligible voices while standing in a nearby pasture. The sound, which they first assumed were echoes from a CB radio, seemed to be emanating out of the air directly above them. They listened more closely, and they could hear distinctly 2 voices speaking in an unknown language, which Terry described as choppy and halting like a cross between Russian and Native American. One voice had a deep resonant tone, and the other was higher pitched. Terry yelled into the air, "We can hear you!" The voices stopped momentarily, and a deeper voice broke into rumbling laughter.
Yeah.
And then the conversation went on as before.
Don't talk to the skinwalkers.
Yeah. By the fall, the Shermans reported seeing the lights in the field one night. Gwen grabbed her binoculars, focusing in on to see a square lighted structure sitting on the ground. Before the lights blinked out, Gwen caught a glimpse of a, quote, large, heavy-set individual seated in the object. A short time later, the craft appeared again. This time, she and Terry watched it through a 60-power spotting scope. They could see a figure standing next to the object. Terry described this as a person or being, quote, over 7 feet tall and decked out totally in a black uniform and very huge. The Shermans noted that the being appeared to have a visor or something shiny over its face because of the way the light glinted off his head. Soon, another strange phenomenon began to display itself. The family started noticing blue glowing balls moving around the property. The balls gave off a crackling sound, seemed intelligently controlled, and could either hover or move at unbelievably fast speeds. One evening, the Shermans watched as the blue balls approached their home. The light hovered within a foot of a horse's face, spooking it. From a distance of 10 feet, Gwen shined a flashlight on the globe, and it retreated. It then approached Terry as if inspecting him. Terry described it as a, quote, glass ball about the size of a baseball, which appeared to contain 2 blue fluids which intermingled with each other, unquote.
Oh, man. I remember that, too, yeah. That they looked like just like glowing electrical orbs, but once they got close enough, he realized it was like this transparent sphere that contained 2 immiscible fluids.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff.
Later that evening, the dreadful ball returned. This time, it hovered in the face of a cow. Again, the globe retreated, and the Shermans' 3 dogs shot off after it, chasing it in snarling hot pursuit. Gwen and Terry watched as the dogs followed the globes into the wooded area. They lost sight of the ball and then heard a piercing yelp.
Yep.
The 3 dogs did not return. Deciding that discretion was the better part of valor, the Shermans decided to wait until the morning to investigate. The next day, Gwen and Terry found 3 burned circles in the woods. In the center of each circle, they discovered a greasy blob of what looked like shortening or butter. The trees above the burned rings also had been scorched. According to Terry, the grass eventually grew back, but the tree limbs died.
Yeah.
This was the final straw for Gwen and Terry.
Dogs
Yeah.
never came back, so they were basically
They just couldn't
Toasted.
go on without their dogs. Yep.
yeah.
And they decided they could no longer guarantee the safety of their children, and they decided to put the place up for sale.
Oh my God. That's
So you think
crazy.
those are like little drones? You know, I mean, I know again we're going on this nuts and bolts technological angle, but these little glass spheres, like I mean, unless that's somehow holding a being, it must be controlled remotely, or do you think it's? And there's no way to, you know, you have
Sounds
to
like
speculate. Yeah, it sounds like magic. It sounds like fireballs, right? But then the dogs chase it off into
just
the woods.
over there
And
grinning.
yeah, he's just like looking at us and laughing. Yes, Russ.
Yes,
all
There-
that.
expand your mind now.
We'll be speculating about certain parts of that, but the thing is that nothing, you can't really say, well, it's probably this or probably that, because there's always conflicting data. Like no matter
Yeah.
how sure you are of a certain,
Yeah.
you know, it has to be this, then there inevitably will be some bits of data that completely contradict that.
Yeah.
And again, I think maybe there may actually be a legitimate reason for why that is, and we'll get to that in the fourth segment.
Okay. All
It
right.
requires 33% brain expansion.
Okay. We haven't gotten there yet. All right.
So in 1996, Bigelow bought the ranch for less than what the Shermans paid for it. And he also sold, Sherman also sold some of his cattle. And I'm sure most of the listeners probably have heard some of the things related to the.
Yeah, they got a
Related to the
caretaker
cat.
agreement,
Right, right.
and the wife and kids would not go back out there, but Sherman himself would go out there and help the scientists and sort of lead them around the property and show them where things had happened. But yeah, they still kept some of their cattle there. But yeah, I mean, they had Angus. They had some. When I remember reading the book, they had very high priced Angus bulls. You know, they each one cost like $10,000 or something, and so they would lose a bunch of cows, and that's a fortune.
Yeah.
You know, when they get mutilated, and you come out there and there's 4 mutilated cows, and that's $40,000 you just lost. You know.
Due to his long-standing interest in the subject, in 1995, Las Vegas real estate developer Robert Bigelow created the National Institute of Discovery Science, NIDS, for the scientific study of the paranormal phenomenon. The organization was comprised of staff of a scientific advisory panel, many PhDs, and 2 former NASA astronauts, and was led by molecular biologist chemist Dr. Colin Kelleher. NIDS began investigating Skinwalker Ranch in May of 1996, prior to Bigelow closing on the purchase. George Knapp, who has reported extensively on the site, also co-authored the book Hunt for Skinwalker with Colin Kelleher,
Yeah.
and has relayed many details which occurred on the. In an interview with Alejandro Rojas on Open Minds TV, Knapp quoted one interesting or semi-funny encounter. And this is a long quote from Knapp. I like the way he tells the story. One day, a big Grizzly Adam type guy claimed that he was drawn to the property, and he didn't know why, but he wanted to meditate on the ranch.
Yeah, I remember this story.
The rancher and his son said, "All right, fine, you can spend a couple of minutes and we'll take you out in the middle of the homestead." They went off to the side and kind of kept an eye on the guy, chuckling to themselves. And he was there in the field for a couple of minutes with his head to the sky and his eyes closed, with his arms lifted up and palms to the sky. And they hear this cowbell off in the distance. And the ranchers realize, hey, you know what? We don't have cows with cowbells. And then they see this thing moving in the trees. It's like Predator, like in the movie Predator, a camouflage, opaque sort of critter, large, moving through the trees, and it comes out of the trees, and it goes right at the Grizzly Adam dude.
Yep.
And the rancher was just about to warn him that something was going to happen, and this creature goes right up to the guy and roars like a lion, and you can hear it from a mile away. This guy just about crapped his pants and jumped backwards and falls to the ground. This thing, whatever it was in camo mode, goes back into the trees and disappears. The ranchers come rushing over to the guy, and the guy was petrified. The rancher had to pry himself off the guy. They let him off at the front gate, and he left screaming and yelling, "This is Satan, it's the devil, it's evil." And they kind of laughed it off because they didn't know what the creature really was.
Yeah, that was
Wow,
the skinwalker. Don't you be doing your hippie meditation bullshit on my path, bro.
But they get weirder.
Yeah.
And here's another quote from that. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but I think it was in 1997 when Colin Colliher and another one of the NID staffers, a PhD guy, brilliant guy, walking again in the middle of Homestead. They had dogs with them that they used sort of as biosensors. The dogs would often give them advance warning if something weird was going to happen. They're walking in the middle of the homestead, and suddenly both of the dogs go behind their legs, and the two researchers who are walking through the field, they're huddling, and they're kind of shaking, and they're scared of something. And the two scientists look up in the trees, and they notice what looks like a black cloud moving at treetop level. It starts getting bigger and bigger and gets into the middle of the trees, right in front of them. And suddenly, one of the scientists, the second scientist, is frozen. And out of him comes a voice, and it's not his voice. It's speaking. I'm trying to remember the exact words because there were a couple of experiences similar to what happened to these people, but it was something to the effect of, we're watching you. We're watching you, and you're not welcome here. This guy is speaking, and within a couple of minutes, he sort of bounces out of it, and he was in a trance. It had taken over his brain, it bounces out of him, and he was disoriented for a while. When they went back to the trailer to spend the night, he had terrible nightmares and dreams, and it stuck with him, I guess for a couple of days. But what really happened was, if you could make a guess, I'm not gonna say either way, but I mean the guy who's worked for a major think tank and labs in the U.S. military. He's a brilliant guy, and he didn't make it up. It was a disturbing
you're quoting
experience.
Knapp, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was a disturbing experience. Yeah, it's a little bit funny because I'm quoting. He's just talking off the cuff, and I'm reading his comments. So but he says, but the things that happened later were worse. On August 25th, 1997, two members of the NID staff were sitting silently on an edge of a bluff. At 2:30 a.m., after a 6-hour watch, they decided to move their operation to a different part of the ranch. Just then, one of them noticed a faint yellowish-colored light 100 feet below them, and as they watched, it appeared to be growing brighter. 20 seconds later, he alerted his partner, and it was definitely getting brighter and seemed to be getting slowly bigger. He then looked at the object through state-of-the-art night vision binoculars. He could see the dirty yellow expanding light seemed to be positioned just above the ground, and he stated, quote, "It's not a tunnel. It's a tunnel. It's not just a light." Now standing, he exclaims, "Jesus Christ, something's in the tunnel."
Yeah.
His partner, looking through the camera, could only see the yellow light, which had been expanding to over 2 feet in diameter, and he could not understand why he was unable to see anything. Then, bordering on panic, the other says, "Oh God, there's a black creature climbing out of it. I can see his head. It has no face," he added. "Oh my God, it just climbed out." The cameraman rubbed his eyes and shook his head. All he could see was a dirty yellow light, now about 4 feet in diameter. Suddenly it dawned on him, the night vision binoculars. "It's on the ground. Oh my God, it walked away." Within 30 seconds, the dull yellow circle had shrunk and about half its diameter and was losing intensity. "What happened?" asked the cameraman. "The big black creature just crawled through the tunnel and got onto the ground and walked away. That's what happened. It's lurking around here somewhere."
Yeah, that's one of the most infamous stories from that whole book. Yeah.
Right. He says, "Jesus Christ, of course I'm sure." The cameraman asked him, "Are you sure?" And he goes, "Jesus Christ, of course I'm sure." The night vision turned the light into a 3D tunnel, and a large creature, I'm thinking maybe 400 pounds at least, 6 foot tall, using its elbows as levers along to pull itself along, just crawled out of the damn tunnel.
Yeah, so he saw something belly crawling through the tunnel, and then it comes out, gets on the ground, gets up and leaves, but the other guy could just see an orange light. But they do with the night vision goggles, that's what it looked like to him. Now, again, you have to ask yourself, is this something weird about the tech they're using?
Dr. Eric Davis explains a little bit more about that encounter. I believe from his description, it would seem as though Dr. Eric Davis was one of the witnesses.
Yeah.
That sounds like some of the Bigfoot encounters, right? I mean, people have seen
Yeah.
They have seen Bigfoot
sort of like go into a hole and just vanish.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm going to skip through some of these. You get the gist of this. Is there's really strange things going on. Well, I guess
And they do sound ominous. That's the other thing about Skinwalker is that none of them are positive experiences.
Now, I want to
They
emphasize
don't want you there.
this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
And that's what the Indian said. Like,
it's like go, sneak into somebody's yard in the middle of the night, and it's never going to be a positive experience, right?
for the people or for you?
For the person that you're sneaking into their yard.
Yeah, right.
And
They're gonna see you and be like, "Get out of here!" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that some of this sounds like completely fantastical, and it's just not. It sounds made up, but the fact of the matter is, this is well documented.
Yep.
And lots of money, millions of dollars went into research here. There was clearly something going on that caused, and I'll get into that now.
And it's it's the question is like, are we being fed a line of crap so that we're distracted from what they really learned? Or because I do agree that he got physicists and biologists and chemists and lots of high-powered people and NASA dudes to go out there and study this stuff. Now, then George Knapp does this report, which turns out to be, does a book on it. George Knapp's been fascinated by the Uinta Basin for a long time because that's not the only place that weird stuff happens. Skinwalker Ranch is not the only place in the basin.
Right.
That whole area is famous for crazy encounters.
And how far back do the oral traditions go from the natives about the area?
I mean, like
They said
he
at least
said,
10
generations.
What
for
do they
that
call
site.
it? They call it the skinwalker.
The path of the Skinwalker.
The path of the skinwalker.
They have stories about all of Uinta, but that particular area, they're like, stay away from this spot. Like, you stupid people.
There's another location. I can't remember the name of it right off. It's talked about in Timothy Good's book. I'm trying to remember which book it is. He talks about another site in New Mexico that has very similar phenomena.
Yeah.
Like it's almost completely parallels what's going on in Skinwalker. This is some of the lesser known data here, or information related to this. So I think I'll jump into that because a lot of this stuff people probably heard, but some of this probably have not.
Okay.
Well, real quick, is there any explanation behind the term skinwalker from the natives?
It's supposed to be a medicine man gone bad. I mean, like, that's the most basic explanation you can give it. Like a magic practitioner who has gone dark, started doing the dark side stuff.
The dark arts?
Yeah.
But is he wearing skins?
Yes, they can change, and the more powerful they get, the more forms they can take on.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the idea of skinwalker is they're walking in other things' skins.
I gotcha.
They can appear as animals. They can see through the eyes of animals. There's a whole bunch of different legends. But yeah, and they supposedly have to do terrible rituals to gain these powers and stuff. And so they're wizards and witches gone bad, basically, in the Indian tradition. And that's just from what I know. I mean, I'm sure it goes much deeper than that. But also, we're up on a break. You want to keep going, or should we take a break?
Your call.
I say we take a break and then come back. You got another set of stories of
sounds
lesser-known facts about Skinwalker Ranch? All right, sounds good to me. Let's take a break.
And we are back. Fourth segment. Maybe not the last segment. That's right. Wait! Man, dude, this is... I'm kind of a layman on the whole UFO thing. Like, I just never really looked into it.
This is the most UFO exposure Kyle's ever had.
Yeah. And it's awesome. And this is just like I think it was the first episode where you were going through all of the government actions, response, all of the stuff that the governments have been doing regarding this phenomenon was really amazing. And then this, Skinwalker Ranch, I've heard the name, I've heard stories, it brought up in conversations so many times, never looked into it, but just hearing, your presentation on.
Is there an audiobook version of that?
Well, my question was going to be is like, what is the best way to get information on this? Because there's so much stuff on the internet. Like, is there an audiobook or is there a PDF that's in the free?
I own the book. Let's see if there's an audiobook version of it.
Okay, yeah, because I would love to just dig into that, and then also, of course,
in fact, I have it.
Okay,
I have it. Yeah.
How to look up? I guess the book would probably have this, but especially the legends of the natives and stuff about.
There's so much to this that honestly, I would suggest that at one point we could do a deep dive specifically into Skinwalker.
I would love that.
I'm trying to do there's kind of an overarching theme to this, and I think the next segment is actually going to sort of start to provide potential explanations for some of this. So I'm just kind of touching on certain aspects of Skinwalker.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's
there's so
cool,
much there. We could probably do 2 or 3 easily on just Skinwalker.
Yeah, just your overview is I'm like, man, this is amazing. I want to look into this more.
Okay, I own the book and I have the audio version, so you should just.
All right, well, all right, I'm checking it out.
I have a PDF of it as well.
Okay. Don't be giving out stolen shit, man.
No, I bought it. Okay, this is an aspect that's not well known about. You've maybe heard minor reference to it, but this is some detail that took some digging to find. Because, and I'm going to back up just a minute. There are very often suggestions that what's going on at Skinwalker is some type of military tests of psychotronic weaponry and things like that. So
yeah.
I think it's important, and that makes sense. It's a logical conclusion, but you have to look again in context. You have to look at the timelines and look, okay, well, when was the government first involved in that location? So
it's a valid hypothesis.
Right.
I don't know if I'd say it's a logical conclusion.
I tend to lean more towards the idea of sacred sites. This is something that's very prevalent in the ancient world. That there are places, whether they're obviously on Earth, that people for thousands of years have thought, believed that had some kind of strange energy or connection to some other world.
The veil is thin, yeah.
Yeah, and they built things there to mark them. Oftentimes they were like, stay away from there. Other times they're like, go there and have ceremonies, So that's kind of where I would go in my head.
But where were you going with looking at when the government was involved? Because I think you were trying to make a point.
Okay.
Yeah.
In 2006, Gary Bacon of Starstream Research reported about a leak of information concerning the formulation of a DIA Technology Insight Gauge Evaluation and Review Committee chaired by Dr. Ruth David. The DIA group, known as the Tiger Committee, was convened to report on threat of surprise advances in weaponized technology. Officially, the Tiger Group's committee's interests included intelligence and threat analysis in the area of new technologies, nanotechnology, biotechnology, chemistry, electronics, communication systems, computer science, physics, aeronautics, and new type of spy systems. However, a Tiger Committee member suggested that more than human threats were of a concern. The following year, in 2007, an individual from the DIA, Dr. James Thomas Lakatsky, a PhD in physics and mathematics, read about the ranch and thought that there might be something there of interest to the DIA and the Pentagon related to national security. So he reached out to Bob Bigelow and said, "Hey, I just read your book on the Skinwalker, and I'd really be interested in going out there to take a look." Bigelow responded, "Yeah, fly out to Vegas and I'll take you out there." Lakatsky had suspicions that the UFO phenomena might encompass a much broader range of paranormal phenomena, and that the craft observed may not be the end-all, be-all, and only represent the tip of the iceberg. So he wanted to visit Skinwalker Ranch to take a look. Dr. Lakatsky was a serious-minded scientist with a solid background in nuclear engineering and plasma physics, having worked for the Missile Defense Agency and DARPA's System Planning Corporation prior to the DIA, and his wife worked at NASA. Upon arrival at the ranch, Knapp claims, this is George Knapp, claims that within 5 minutes, Dr. Lakatsky had an experience which he emphasized was totally tailored specifically for him. Knapp states, "It was something that appeared in the air 10 feet away from him, inside the house while he was having a conversation. And it was at such an angle that it was only viewable within his line of sight. The thing appeared to him. He was trying to play it cool and not let anybody else know it was there. He's in the main ranch house, hearing some stories from the caretakers who lived there, and this thing appeared inside the house in broad daylight." UFO researcher Joe Murgia uncovered further details of the encounter that are not widely known. According to Dr. Eric Davis, he reports, quote, "A 3D object appeared in midair in front of him and changed shape like a changing topological figure. It went from a pretzel shape to a Morbius Strip shape. Mobius Strip shape. It was 3D and multicolored." In regard to this, Jeremy Corbell further added that the Morbius Strip had hieroglyphic etchings around it. Morbius states, quote, "I have to admit that when I read that, I had no idea what a Morbius Strip was. So a quick wiki search, I learned that it was discovered in 1858 by August Morbius, a German mathematician and theoretical astronomer, and he describes it as follows. In mathematics, a Morbius strip is a surface with only one side and only one boundary curve. The Morbius strip is the simplest non-orientable surface. It can be realized as a ruled surface. A less used presentation of the Morbius strip is that of the topological quotient of a torus. In God, Infinity, and the Morbius Universe, author Kenneth Harper Fenton states, "The Morbius strip is one twisted and pinched in the middle, looks like the symbol for infinity. Some believe that the universe is actualized as a Morbius strip, with a finite number of twists of the vibrating strings in space. It is finite in that it is going forward. It transverses time and space, turning in a warped circle as it experiences its own starting point. It reoccurs over and over again, perhaps eternally."
All right, so I'm gonna have to homocorrect us. It's Mobius strip. So if you take like a strip of a ribbon or a strip of paper, and you rotate one side, flip it over, and then you connect them together with tape, you've got a Mobius strip. You follow that.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you follow the surface,
follow the finger, and
it's endless.
It's just one side.
It's one side.
Yeah.
So to the average person, the object, although startling, may not have had any deeper meaning, but it presented itself in a position visible only to a PhD mathematician, and which carried a particular significance, perhaps even a message. This begs the question, how did the agency behind the display know the witness was capable of recognizing it? What was its intent? And did it precognitively know what would happen as a result?
And I want to know what was implied by the pretzel. Like, is there some kind of message there too? Or was it really a pretzel or something?
I think he's just referring to the shape.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't initially know what you're looking at. It might
Yeah,
look
he
like a
said it
pretzel
started
strip.
out like a pretzel sort of thing, and then it turned into a Mobius strip. Like, was it actually a pretzel, or was it more like a Celtic knot? Because that's another version of that kind of thing. It's an endless. When you trace it out, it's actually all one thing. But when you look at it, it looks like a complicated thing. But you realize it's just one line.
In an interview with Knapp recently, Bigelow described the incident, and he said that it was a tubular shape that looked like the cover of Tubular Bells. It's looks like a pretzel, but
Okay.
tubular. But I think it's just because they're not wanting to reveal too much detail about this.
Yeah.
So Knapp describes the result of the apparition. So Lakatsky leaves and tells Bigelow about it later. He goes back to Washington and he looks up Harry Reid, who at the time was the Senate majority leader. They had some interactions on national security issues, and he told him about his experience. He said, "We need to study this. This is a unique place." And Reid went to some of his colleagues, and as the story is told, his colleagues in Senate, they made an argument that UFOs deserve to be studied and that there could be direct national security implications, and that ignoring them didn't make them go away, it just made them more enigmatic. So they set up a program that was initially OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. It was separate from ATIP, the program that Lou Elizondo was involved with. James Lukatsky, Bob Bigelow, and Colin Kelleher, and everyone associated with the NIDS knew that UFOs do in fact occur in connection with other strange stuff, and that as much as ufologists don't like to admit it, there is a connection to Bigfoot, crop circles, and there are connections to animal mutilations. It's not clear what those connections were, other than proximity and at the same time in the same place, but of all different phenomena. You had it all there on the ranch. There was strange stuff going on. Whatever it was, it in essence had sent Lukatsky an engraved invitation to come back, and he did.
Isn't Skinwalker now, or that ranch is now owned by somebody else who's doing more experiments? They're a lot more secret.
Yes, it was bought by Brandon Fugel.
And they're doing updated versions. I read something recently about a guy who was allowed to go out there, and they talked to the team, and they're much more. He's, at least from what I was reading there, they seem much more aware that the entity or whatever it is that's out there is aware of them. Like when I was reading through Skinwalker, Hunt for the Skinwalker, I was constantly annoyed by the seeming unwillingness of the scientific team that was put out there to realize that what they were dealing with was something that was aware they were there, right? And so they were constantly they'd put up cameras in obvious places, and then the cameras would get shut down right before some crazy stuff happened. And then the ranch guy is like, you got to hide your stuff. It knows you're here.
Yeah, there's definitely an interactive quality to this.
Yeah, and they were treating it like they were like, well, we're just putting up stuff to look at a natural phenomena that's completely unaware of our existence. And the guy was like, no, it's smarter than you are, So I think this new team is taking that approach.
Again, there's so much to this that we could be here for days talking about it. So to not spend too much time on finer details that we probably will go through in a future episode. Suffice to say that a lot of study, first of all, the $22 million that were reported as going to, in the New York Times article, as going to ATIP, did not go to ATIP. They went to BASS, which was Bigelow's investigation at Skinwalker.
Yeah.
So clearly there was concern. That's a lot of money. They spent a lot of money on this, seemingly crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of how this is relevant to the next segment, I think it's important to learn why it was canceled.
Okay.
When asked why the program had been shut down, Knapp stated, quote, Basically, high-level people in different intelligence agencies who are fundamentalist Christians who think that anything involving UFOs and the paranormal is satanic. That is, by studying it, we invite Satan into the world, and they wanted it killed for those reasons. I know that sounds like, and I'm not belittling anybody's religious beliefs, but man, that kind of a decision-making, deciding to kill a program that's doing good work because Satan might be involved, that doesn't make me feel any better about the Pentagon when I hear stories like that, but it's true. Knapp concluded, when someone uses mumbo-jumbo and spooky stories and religious beliefs to put the kibosh on a scientific study or a legitimate inquiry, that's troublesome. You know that maybe it is Satan. Maybe it's demons. I don't know what it is. Interdimensional, time travel, interdimensional people, all of the above. Cryptoterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, we don't know. But we need to figure it out. If not for national security reasons or personal safety, just for the sheer joy of discovery. It is a very bad national security policy that we don't want when you don't want to know something. It makes no sense at all.
I also, the first thing I think of when I hear that is, like, people at the top of intelligence agencies are like, this is Satan. I'm like, yeah. That's exactly what they said. They don't want you studying it.
Well,
they don't think it's Satan, but that's what they said.
Lou Elizondo published an article in November of 2018 titled What We Know and What We Believe Are Not Always the Same Things. And here's how our perception of fact influences our worldview. He states, quote, UAP has even been associated with demons and Judeo-Christian beliefs. I experienced this firsthand during my time working at the U.S. government's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, where certain senior government officials thought our collection of facts on unexplained phenomena was dangerous to their philosophical beliefs. In fact, at ATIP, my predecessor, Dr. James Lukatsky's career was ruined because of misplaced fear by an elite few. Rather than accept the data that as provided by top-ranking rocket scientists, they decided that the data was a threat to their belief system and instead destroyed his career because of it. Several dear friends, despite my disagreement that UAPs were demonic in nature, knowledge doesn't necessarily have to be at odds with beliefs, but any well-grounded belief should always make room for new knowledge.
Maybe it's old knowledge.
Yep.
And they know what they're talking about. Or maybe they don't know what they're talking about, but it's old.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know.
So he's again implying there that people who are very religious destroyed his career because they didn't like the information he was coming up with? That's
what he's saying. He's saying that there were people in the government that believed that whatever this entity or power that they were dealing with there was demonic.
Yeah.
But sometimes some of the information that was coming out might have given them that impression.
Yeah, or it's an easy thing to say. I don't know.
You never know with the spooks.
Yeah, you never know. That's what I'm saying is they're spooks. I don't believe anything they say.
Right.
So they're like, it's demons. I'm like, no, it isn't. And you don't actually think that because you're a spook. But that's what you're saying.
Right. Recurring suggestions of a connection to religious beliefs were fueled by statements such as this from a source involved in the program, again believed to be Dr. Eric Davis. Quote, I'm not religious, so I don't believe in the Antichrist, in the biblical context, of course. In October 2002, the ultra-terrestrial phenomenon advised me to search for Dr. Jack Safari and Dr. Hal Puthoff, as their work would be important and that they are friends. I was warned about the tricksters, and I assumed in a symbolic gesture I was told that there was a, quote, war raging in heaven. A war raging in heaven, exact words, which play over and over in the back of my mind. I'm not sure how literal we should take that, though.
So a non-religious person is getting these messages? He said they were from ultra-terrestrials. Is that what he said?
Yes.
Okay.
What he's calling an ultra-terrestrial advised him to search out
Hal Puthoff. Yeah.
And told him that there was a war raging in heaven. Which feeds to the whole
of course.
belief that this is demonic. And
yeah.
So where are we at?
Do they mean space? Or are we talking about
What, are they in heaven?
transcendental heaven?
It could have been figurative.
Yeah, the implication is that it sounds very biblical.
Right.
But yeah, we're about halfway through this, so you got plenty of time. Keep going.
Okay. On December 16th, 2020, Professor Tyler Cohen interviewed former CIA Director John Brennan and brought up the subject of UFOs. Brennan stated, quote, I think an important thing for analysts to do is not to go into this type of thing challenging or discounting certain types of possibilities or believing in advance that it's likely X, Y, or Z. You really have to approach this with an open mind and get as much data as possible and as much expertise as possible brought to bear. When people talk about it, is there other life besides what's in this world or in this globe? Life is defined in many different ways. I think it's a bit presumptuous and arrogant for us to believe that there are no other life forms anywhere in the entire universe. And what that might be is subject to a lot of different views. But I think the phenomena we're going to be seeing continues to be unexplained and might, in fact, be some type of a phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand and could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life. Brennan is obviously a very intelligent individual with extensive experience answering difficult questions before Congress. His demeanor during the video interview makes it clear that his responses are very carefully worded. At the end of the interview regarding UFOs, he stated this, quote, supernatural is in the eye of the beholder. Again, I'm not going to discount them. That's why I'm agnostic as opposed to an atheist. I just want to leave my mind open to what something might be, but who knows what those things might actually be. Given George Knapp's comments regarding the cancellation of OSAP BASS programs, I find Brennan's choice of words quite potentially suggestive.
Who's saying this? Is that you writing this, or is it?
Yeah,
are
this
you quoting
is me.
somebody?
This
Okay.
is me
All
saying this. This struck me as soon as I heard that. I thought that was a very curious choice of words.
Yeah.
Webster provides the following definitions. Skeptic, a person who questions the validity or authenticity of something purporting to be factual.
Yeah.
Atheist, a person who denies or disbelieves in the existence of a supreme being or beings. He didn't say he was a skeptic.
No. He said he was agnostic.
No, he said, that's
I'm
why
not an
I'm
atheist.
agnostic as opposed to atheist.
Right.
Not agnostic as opposed to skeptic.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, atheism and agnosticism tend to have religious connotations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You often hear statistics thrown around, such as 57% of the population believes that other intelligent life exists in the universe, or 45% of the population believes that ETs are visiting or have visited this planet in the distant past. While that may serve as a barometer in some respects, most of us know that polls can be manipulated. However, more importantly, along that line of questioning, I suggest that there may be something significant being missed. Some individuals believe in ETs. Others believe in ghosts and spirits. Some believe in fairies and demons. And many believe in a supreme being and angels. Individually, each of these belief systems may represent a subgroup of the population. But what if there is an unrecognized overlap in some or all of these beliefs? Suddenly combined, the belief quotient jumps significantly and may represent the overwhelming majority of the world's population. What might be lacking in such a scenario is the willingness to look at the data and connect the dots. The UFO phenomenon may be very similar or the exact same phenomenon experienced through spirituality. Answers may be elusive because the fundamental nature of the phenomenon may be untestable scientifically utilizing current understanding of physics. In 2005, a paper was published in the Journal of British Interplanetary Society titled Inflation Theory, Implications for Extraterrestrial Visitation, co-authored by Dr. Harold Puthoff, James Deardorff, Bernard Haish, and Bruce Maccabee. The paper focuses on Enrico Fermi's paradox, which questions where are all the aliens and why isn't it obvious that Earth has been visited by extraterrestrials. The introduction states, quote, theoretical possibilities unknown to Fermi make the paradox even stronger today. One can rationally conjecture about the prospects afforded by adjacent M-brane universes. Indeed, the multi-dimensions underlying superstring and M-brane theories, if they are correct, there could be inhabited universes separated from ours by minute orthogonal distances. In the highly recommended book Daimonic Reality, A Field Guide to the Otherworld, author Patrick Harper writes, Christianity was simply another set of beliefs competing for sovereignty with several others such as Gnosticism, Hermeticism, and especially Neoplatonism. They were eventually either declared heretical or partially absorbed into Christianity, which became the official religion of the Holy Roman Empire. The great authorities on the intermediate world of physics reality were the Neoplatonists, who flourished from about the middle of the 3rd century AD to the middle of the 6th. Following Plato's most mystical dialogue, the Timaeus, they called the intermediate region the soul of the world, widely known in Latin as anima mundi. Just as the human soul mediated between the spirit and the body, so the world's soul mediated between the one, which is God and the transcendent source of all things, and the material sensory world. The agents of mediation were called the daimons, who, as it were, populated the soul of the world and provided a connection between the gods and men. Christianity later unjustly pronounced the daimons demons, but originally they were simply the beings who thronged myth and folklore, from the Greek nymphs, stars, fauns, dryads, etc., elves, gnomes, trolls, jinn, and so on. The daimons were essentially the Gnostic, Hermetic, Neoplatonic traditions of philosophy. But the daimons of myth evolved into a sort more suited to these philosophies, where angels, souls, and acrons, thorns, or powers, many of which infiltrated Christianity. Ever flexible, the daimons changed their shape to suit the times, even becoming abstractions when necessary, but preferring, if possible, to remain personified. Never quite divine nor quite human, the daimons erupted out of the soul of the world. They were neither spiritual nor physical, but both. Neither were they wholly inner or wholly outer, but both. They were paradoxical beings, but being both good and bad, benign and frightening, guiding and warning, prospecting and maddening. Plato has Diamata described them in the Symposium, a dialogue devoted to the most neglected topic in philosophy, love. Everything that is daimonic is intermediate between God and mortal. Interpreting and conveying the wishes of men to gods and the will of gods to men, it stands between the two and fills the gaps. God has no contact with men, only through the daimonic is there intercourse and conversation between men and gods, whether in the walking state or sleep. And a man who is an expert in such in intercourse is a daimonic man. The Greeks understood from early times that daimons could be psychological. They attributed the daimons to irrational impulses which arise in a man against his will to tempt him, hope, for instance, or fear. Daimons of passion or jealousy or hatred still possess us, and they have always caused us to cry out forlornly. I don't know what got into me. I was beside myself. But while demonic activity is mostly noticeable in irrational, obsessive behavior, it is always quietly working behind the scenes. Our task is to identify the daimons behind our deepest needs and desires, our projects and our ideologies, and as we have seen, they always have religious concerns coming from and returning to the divine archetypal ground of being. The one thing we must not do is ignore them because, as Plutarch warned, he who denies the daimons breaks the chains that unite the world to God. You're probably wondering where I'm going with this.
Well, I'm trying to figure it out. Is the implication that this is some sort of, because that was talking about daimons being part of the earth soul, the animus mundi, right? And so are we looking at, and then you're saying, well, they're both physical and spiritual. So I can see that are you going for a connotation that this phenomena we're looking at as UFOs and all these encounters may be something that the Greeks recognized or these Platonic people recognized as the daimonic reality?
Could they be describing the same phenomenon that we're seeing today?
Yeah, but the implication that they're responsible for all of our irrational feelings.
The suggestion is that they're the voice in our head.
Yeah.
Yeah, the emotion comes from that is part of the channel. Right?
Yeah. There's a lot more to this. It'll sort of become kind of self-explanatory at one point in this.
Well, you ready for a break and we'll have the special fifth segment?
Sure.
All right.
The fifth segment.